Hey everyone, it's Justin and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm so excited to be participating in the Altenew and Picketfence Studio collaboration YouTube hop in celebration of the new Stampwheel 2.0. For today's video, I am going to be showing how the new Stampwheel 2.0 works. In addition to that, I'm also going to be pulling in some of my favorite Altenew and Picketfence Studio products in order to make a Wonderland themed card come together. So let's get into the details for how this whole project is going to start out. When working with a stamp wheel, I like to begin with a 6x6 inch piece of paper. This is Dewdrops by Altenew, and I'm going to use the Aqualicious Fresh Dye ink to blend out the edges of this panel with that Aqualicious ink. Aqualicious is in the same family of colors as Dewdrops. It's just a little bit darker, so it's going to give me a very nice transition of color when using a life-changing blending brush to apply this color to the bottom edge of my 6x6 square panel. Now, I like to work with square cardstock with a stamp wheel because it's my foolproof method of ensuring that all of my images come out nice and centered. We'll get a little bit more into how I make that happen later on in today's video. With my paper all blended the way that I need it to be, it's time to break out that Stampwheel 2.0. So I'm taking it out of its packaging. It's got this nice big workspace. I'm going to take the top window of the stamp wheel off and also show you that the right side of the stamp wheel is removable, which allows you to work with sizes of paper beyond what would fit in the normal stamp wheel. So it also comes with the Stampwheel 2.0 Ultra Sticky Mat, so you're going to want to get that placed inside of your stamp wheel, which is going to help hold your papers in place while in use. Now I'm going to grab that square piece of Dewdrop cardstock that we ink blended earlier in this video, and I am going to try my best to ensure that I get it nice and centered. It may not be perfect, but it's about as centered as I can get it to be. Using the Mushrooms Aplenty stamp set by Picketfence Studio, I begin the process of laying out different mushrooms to fill up one of the quadrants of the stamp wheel window. So here you see me sort of puzzle piecing together all of these different little mushrooms that come in the stamp set, and I'm trying to find a way to ensure that they stay within that quadrant, as I want to stamp this 4 times for my background and sort of have a confetti circles of mushrooms that are just going to give you all of those Wonderland feels. So I'm putting them all nicely into place, kind of keeping in mind when they're starting to go off of the paper, I'm not really going to have to worry about spacing too much beyond that. And then once I have everything really nicely in place, it's going to begin the process of getting everything inked and ready to go. Now, to stamp out my mushrooms, I'm using Galactic Stream Fresh Dye ink by Altenew, which is in the same color family as Aqualicious for what we used for our ink blending, and Dewdrops for the color of our cardstock. So I'm inking up all of my mushrooms. I'm going to flip over my stamp wheel window, lock it into place, and then push it down so I get my mushrooms nice and adhered. Once I feel like I have a good impression, and if I don't need to ink it a second time, I can then rotate my window 90 degrees, ink it up again, and then press down to get my second impression. I repeat another 90 degrees to get my third impression for our third quadrant, and then finally I'm going to repeat for the last time of this image to get our fourth quadrant filled up. Now, I wasn't thrilled because there is an area that didn't get filled with a mushroom, so I am going to go ahead and do one more round of inking with another mushroom from the Mushrooms Aplenty stamp set, and I'm going to use that Galactic Stream ink. I'm going to push it into place, and then I'm going to get all 4 of those corners nice and filled up. And here you'll see the radial design that we came with using the Mushrooms Aplenty stamp set. Remember I talked about foolproof methods earlier and making sure your images are nice and centered? This is what I was talking about. I'm pulling in the 5 3/8 by 4 1/8 rectangle die from the Picketfence Studios Beyond Basic Rectangle and Cover Plate die set, and I'm placing it onto my panel in a way so that my image is going to be nice and centered. And then since I have that all die cut and set to the side, we are now going to move on to die cutting some circles. I am going to use the 3-inch connected circle shaker creator die by Picketfence Studio to die cut a piece of vellum and a piece of white cardstock using that main circle ring in the set. So we are going to get a vellum window that's going to be the inside of the die cut, and then we are also going to use the same die to cut out from white cardstock, but that's going to be so we get that white circle frame. So here you see me cutting out the vellum die cut, but then I'm going to go right back in and I'm going to cut it from white cardstock so I can get the circle frame for the image as well. We're going to also use some paper splatter watercolor on our project. We're going to use the opaque white and the liquid forget-me-nots, and this is going to splatter onto our project just to add a nice little bit of embellishment. So I'm going to go ahead, I didn't water down the opaque at all. We're just going to splatter it directly onto our panel. I love using the paper splatter watercolor. I think it's a great way to add some embellishment. Now, for the non-opaque ones like the forget-me-nots, I do water it down just a little bit, and then I pick it up with a clean, I repeat, a clean watercolor brush to make sure that the colors aren't cross-contaminated. So I splatter it onto my paper, let it dry, and it's time to stamp out our sentiment. I am going to be using the Peach and Piper Wonderland Adventure stamp set so I can stamp out the sentiment that says there's always time for tea in my book. So I'm going to use my stamp wheel to get my sentiment nicely into place onto a scrap of that Dewdrops cardstock. I'm then going to pull in the Galactic Stream Fresh Dye ink once again, put it onto my stamp, and then press it into place. Now, because it does act as a positioning stamp, you are able to get multiple impressions because the Stamp Wheel 2.0 does help lock the position in place. Using the coordinating dies for the Peach and Piper Wonderland Adventure stamp set, I am going to die cut out my sentiment to use for my card construction. Here you can see all the little bits and bobs that I have ready. I do have a couple images pre-colored. Those come from the Peach and Piper Wonderland Adventure stamp set, but the tree and the grass comes from the Peach and Piper Easter Adventure stamp set. So it's really nice that you're able to mix and match the different stamp sets by Picketfence Studio to make really cute little scenes. Plus, that little Alice image, I just think she's perfect for underneath a tree because I just think it fits her story so well. I'm going to be using some liquid adhesive to put our circle frame that we had die cut using the connected circle shaker creator die into place on our panel. Once that's into place, I'm going to take our vellum circle that we die cut using the same die set to try and get all of our images into place. So I'm trying to map out exactly where that tree is going to go because I'm going to adhere the tree to the vellum circle first before I actually go ahead and adhere it to my card front. So this is because vellum is a very fickle material to work with. I want to ensure that I map everything out appropriately because I don't want that vellum peeking around my images and having wet spots on my project that I'm going to have to find some way to cover up or figure out a way to deal with them. So I'm using my images of the tree and Alice, mapping them onto my circle, and I'm putting liquid adhesive directly behind them because they're going to act as masks for my liquid adhesive on the vellum. And I also put a little bit of liquid adhesive in the upper left portion of the circle as well because I mapped out that I wanted to put my sentiment there, and I know that the sentiment will cover that section very nicely. So I'm getting my vellum circle nicely into place, and then I'm able to start the process of using some picket fence white foam tape to get the rest of my images into place. So we are going to use foam tape. We're going to cut it into smaller bits, and we're going to use it on the different elements of our card. So I'm going to use foam tape on the sentiment, all three of the bunnies. I thought we only had two for a second. No, it's 3 bunnies that we're going to have on here, but I'm also using them in combination of the liquid adhesive, which we've used to put Alice, the trees, and 2 little tufts of grass down as well. And using a combination of liquid adhesive and foam tape helps add some extra dimension in your card to really create a sweet little scene. Otherwise, it looks very two-dimensional. I mean, it is a card, so if you're going for two-dimensional, by all means, have at it, whatever makes the most sense for your project, but I just think it makes your project a little special when you meld together both liquid adhesive and foam tape to create dimension. I put liquid adhesive on the back of my card base and adhere it to an A2 sized card base so that I'm able to have a nice little liquid frame around it. Once I get my card panel nicely in place and it begins to adhere, I then finish up this card by pulling out a Picketfence Studios sequin mix so that we're going to be able to add just a little bit of sequin embellishment to our project. I like doing this after I adhere it to a card base because sometimes it's really easy when dealing with adhering a card base. If you haven't let your sequins dry entirely, it's easy to accidentally flick them off and have to go through the process of adhering them again. So my little tip to you, apply your embellishments after your panel is on your card base. And there you have it. My card is fully complete. Thank you so very much for stopping by today to check out my collaboration video between Altenew and Picketfence Studios. Now, don't forget, this is a YouTube hop, and there is a list of creators down below who've also given a bunch of inspiration as to how you can use your Picketfence Studios and Altenew products together with the new Stampwheel 2.0 to make some amazing projects. So go over, give them some love, hop along with us, and who knows, you may even win something along the way. Thank you so very much for stopping by again today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you back on my channel really soon. Goodbye.